The genetic sample arrived in a container no bigger than a thumb. Dr. Ril Savan held it up to the light, watching the pale liquid swirl inside. 3 years of diplomatic talks, 2 years of negotiations, all for this tiny vial of human blood. Ril was Lorani, tall and thin with pale blue skin and 4 eyes that could see in spectrums most species could not. She had spent 40 years studying the genetics of alien species. She had cataloged the DNA of over 200 different life forms, but humans were new. Humans were unknown, and that made her nervous. Her colleague Pel Morith waited at the analysis station. Pel was Dravani, short and covered in fine green scales. His species was known for pattern recognition, for seeing connections others missed. He had been Ril's partner for 15 years. "Is that it?" Pel asked, his voice tight with excitement. "This is it," Ril said. She placed the vial into the genetic scanner. The first complete human DNA sample ever provided to the collective. The machine hummed to life. Around them, the Galactic Biological Institute buzzed with activity. Station Harmony 7 was the largest research facility in this sector, home to scientists from 30 different species. But today, only Ril and Pel would see what the scanner found. The first results came quickly. Ril felt her primary heart skip a beat. "That cannot be right," she whispered. Pel leaned closer to the screen. "The base pair count, it is 40% higher than average." "Run it again." They ran it again. The numbers stayed the same. Human DNA was dense, complex, far more complicated than it should be for a species so young. "They have only been spacefaring for 300 years, Pel said. "How can their genetics be this advanced?" Ril did not answer. She was already running deeper scans. The computer began flagging genetic markers one after another. Each flag appeared in red. Red meant predator traits. The flags kept coming. 10, 20, 50. Ril's hands began to shake. 100, 150. "Stop the scan," Pel said, his voice barely a whisper. "I cannot stop it. It is automatic." 200 flags, 220. The scan finished. The screen was covered in red. Ril stared at the results. In 40 years, she had never seen anything like this. The most dangerous predator in the collective database had 17 predator markers. Humans had over 200. "This must be an error," Pel said, but his voice said he knew it was not. The door to the lab opened. Ambassador David Webb walked in, a smile on his face. He was the human assigned to the station, a former scientist himself. He was middle-aged for a human with gray in his hair and lines around his eyes. He seemed friendly, harmless. Ril quickly minimized the scan results. "Good morning, doctors," Webb said. "I thought I would check on your progress. Is there anything you need?" Ril forced herself to stay calm. She was looking at a creature whose DNA contained more predator traits than any species in recorded history, and he was smiling at her like they were old friends. "Everything is fine," she said. "We are just beginning our analysis." "Wonderful. Please let me know if I can help in any way." Webb nodded politely and left. Pel waited until the door closed. "Did you see how he moved? Quiet, controlled, like he was hunting." "He was just walking." "Was he?" Ril turned back to the screen. She expanded the scan results and began reading through the predator markers one by one. Binocular vision, optimized for tracking movement. Canine teeth designed for tearing flesh. Digestive system capable of processing raw meat. Skeletal structure built for sudden bursts of speed. And that was just the beginning. "We need to inform Director Kaas," Ril said. "What do we tell her? That we found a monster wearing a friendly face." "We tell her the truth. We tell her what their DNA says they are." Pel looked toward the door where Webb had exited. "And what are they?" Ril pulled up a classification chart. She had created it years ago to categorize predator species by their hunting methods. Pursuit predators, ambush predators, pack hunters, solitary stalkers. Human DNA had markers for all of them. "I do not know what they are," Ril admitted. But I know what they are not. They are not prey. They never were. Everything in their genetics is designed to kill. The computer chimed. A new analysis had finished. Rill opened it and felt ice spread through her veins. Persistence predation markers. Humans did not just chase their prey, they followed it, for hours, for days, until the prey collapsed from exhaustion and could no longer run. They chased things until those things died of fear and fatigue. Pell made a sound like he was choking. They run their prey to death. Yes, and they are here on this station with us. Rill looked at the door again. Somewhere on Station Harmony 7, Ambassador Webb was walking through corridors filled with species that had no idea what was living among them. Contact Director Koss, Rill said quietly. Tell her we need to meet tonight in private. She looked back at the screen full of red flags. Somewhere in that genetic code was the truth about humanity, and she was beginning to suspect that truth would change everything the collective believed about the universe. The question was whether they would survive learning it. Pell had not slept in 30 hours. His scales had turned from bright green to a dull gray, a sign of stress that any Dravani would recognize. He sat hunched over his workstation, scrolling through data that refused to make sense. Rill worked beside him in silence. They had turned off the main lights hours ago. Now only the glow of their screens lit the laboratory. It felt safer that way. It felt like hiding. I found another one, Pell said. His voice was hollow. Rill did not ask what he found. She already knew. Every hour brought new discoveries, and every discovery was worse than the last. Forward-facing eyes, Pell continued. Position for depth perception, for judging distance to prey. Add it to the list. The list had grown beyond anything they imagined. Human DNA was not the genetics of a species. It was the genetics of a weapon. Their eyes tracked movement automatically. Their ears could detect sounds across a massive range. Their noses could smell blood from distances that seemed impossible. Every sense was sharpened for hunting. But the physical traits were only the beginning. Look at this, Rill said. She pulled up a new analysis on the main screen. Their adrenal system. When threatened, their bodies flood with chemicals that increase strength, speed, and pain tolerance. Flight response, Pell said, common in prey species. No, read the full analysis. This is not flight, this is fight. Their bodies prepare them to attack, not to run. They become stronger when cornered. Pell stared at the data. That is the opposite of every survival instinct we know. They do not have survival instincts. They have hunting instincts, even when they are the ones being hunted. The door opened. Director Yenna Koss entered the lab, her 4 eyes sweeping across the dark room. She was Lorani like Rill, but older and harder. She had run the research division for 30 years. She had seen things that would break lesser scientists. But even she looked disturbed when Rill showed her the data. This cannot be accurate, Koss said. We have verified it 7 times. Koss scrolled through the findings. Teeth designed to tear meat. Shoulder joints that allowed throwing with lethal force. Hip structures built for long-distance running. Hands that could grip with crushing pressure. They are pursuit predators, Koss said. Yes, but also ambush predators, and pack hunters and solitary stalkers. Rill pulled up a comparison chart. They have genetic markers for every predation strategy we have ever documented, all in one species. That is impossible. Apparently not. Pell stood up from his station. He was holding his datapad and his hands were trembling. I found something else, something worse. Rill felt her heart sink. Show us. Pell connected his datapad to the main screen. A new genetic sequence appeared, highlighted in red. Cross-species bonding markers, he said. At first I thought this was a social trait. Many species form bonds with their own kind. And Koss asked, these markers are not for bonding with their own species. They are for bonding with other species, predator species. Humans can form hunting partnerships with other apex predators. The room went silent. You are saying, Ka said slowly, that humans do not just hunt, they recruit. Yes, their genetics allow them to form pack bonds with creatures that should be their competitors. They can turn enemies into allies, predators into partners. Rill thought about the stories she had heard about Earth, the animals called dogs, wolves that humans had turned into companions, the horses they rode into battle, the birds they trained to hunt. Humans did not fear other predators, they made friends with them. This information cannot leave this room, Ka said. I am classifying this research immediately. What about Ambassador Webb? Rill asked. He has been asking about our progress. Tell him nothing. Tell him the analysis is taking longer than expected. Koss moved toward the door. I need to contact the Galactic Council. They must be informed. Informed of what? Pell asked. What exactly do we tell them? Koss paused at the door. Her face was pale even for a Lorani. We tell them that humanity is not what we thought. We tell them that every predator we have ever feared, every hunter we have ever cataloged, every killer we have ever studied exists inside a single species. And that species has been walking freely through our stations for 3 years. She left, the door closed behind her with a soft hiss. Pell slumped back into his chair. What have we discovered? Rill looked at the screen. The genetic data stared back at her, a blueprint of the perfect predator. We discovered the truth, she said. The question now is what we do with it. Outside the lab, somewhere on the station, Ambassador Webb was probably smiling at someone, shaking hands, making friends, using those cross-species bonding markers that made him so dangerous. Rill wondered how many people on Station Harmony 7 already considered Webb a friend, how many had already been recruited without knowing it. And she wondered if she was one of them. 3 days passed, 3 days of fear growing like a disease through the research team, 3 days of classified reports and whispered conversations, and then someone accessed Earth's environmental database. Pell was the one who found it. He had been searching for context, trying to understand how a species could evolve so many predator traits. The answer was simpler and more horrible than he expected. Their planet was trying to kill them. Rill stood behind Pell as he scrolled through the data. Each new fact hit her like a physical blow. Earth's temperature varied by over 100 degrees across its surface. Massive storms called hurricanes could destroy entire cities. The ground itself sometimes shook and split open. Mountains exploded with liquid rock. Waves as tall as buildings crashed onto shores without warning. This is their homeworld? Rill asked. Yes, they call it Earth, but our classification system would call it something else. What? Pell's voice was barely a whisper. A Class 12 Deathworld. Rill had heard the term before. Deathworlds were planets so hostile that intelligent life should never evolve there. The collective had documented only 6 in their entire history. None of them had produced a spacefaring species. Until now. Look at this, Pell said. He pulled up data on Earth's wildlife. They share their planet with millions of other species, predators with teeth the size of knives, insects that carry deadly diseases, plants that produce poison, creatures in their oceans that can kill with a single touch. How did they survive? I do not know, but look at their DNA again. Pell ran a new analysis. The predator markers lit up across the screen, but this time he added a filter. Each marker was now linked to a specific survival challenge on Earth. The pursuit predation genetics helped them chase prey across endless grasslands. The pack hunting instincts helped them take down creatures 10 times their size. The ambush capabilities helped them survive in forests where death waited behind every tree. Every trait was an answer. Every predator marker was a solution to a problem that would have killed any other species. They did not just survive their planet, Rill said. They adapted to it. They became whatever they needed to become. It gets worse. Pell pulled up one more analysis. This one showed dormant genetic sequences, DNA that was no longer active but still present in the human genome. These are markers from extinct species, hundreds of them, species that lived on Earth thousands of years ago. What does that mean? It means humans absorbed them. They bred with them, consumed them, or simply outlasted them. Every predator that ever threatened humanity is now part of their DNA. They did not just survive their death world, Rill. They conquered it. They ate it. Rill felt sick. She had spent her career studying predators. She had cataloged creatures that could kill with poison, with claws, with acid. But none of them frightened her like this. Humans were not a species. They were a collection of every survival adaptation their hellish planet had demanded of them. They were the winners of a war that had lasted millions of years. And now they were here, walking among species that had evolved on gentle worlds with stable climates and few predators. "I need air," Pell said. He left the lab, his scales now completely gray. Rill stayed behind. She was still staring at the data when the door opened again. Ambassador Webb stood in the entrance. "Dr. Savon," he said, "we need to talk." Rill's hearts began racing. She minimized the screen, but she knew it was too late. Webb had seen her reaction. "Ambassador, I was not expecting you." Webb stepped into the lab. His movements were calm, controlled, just like a predator that knew it had already won. "Something is wrong on this station," Webb said. "People are avoiding me. Scientists who were friendly last week now cross corridors to stay away from me. I am not a fool, Doctor. I know it has something to do with your research." Rill said nothing. "I also know that Director Koss has been in contact with the Galactic Council. I know my communications have been monitored. And I know that somewhere in this station, people are deciding whether humanity is a threat." He took another step closer. Rill fought the urge to back away. "So I am asking you directly, what did you find in our DNA?" Rill looked at the man in front of her. He was not armed. He was not threatening. But every cell in her body screamed that she was standing in front of something dangerous. "I cannot discuss ongoing research," she said. Webb studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I understand. But when you finish your analysis, when you have seen everything our genetics has to show, I want you to remember something." "What is that?" Webb smiled. It was a gentle smile, but Rill could see the teeth behind it. "You are looking at what we are, but you are missing what we choose to do with it." He turned and walked out of the lab. Rill stood alone in the darkness, surrounded by data that painted humanity as the ultimate predator. But Webb's words echoed in her mind. What we choose to do with it. What did that mean? What choice could change what their DNA so clearly showed them to be? She did not know, but she was starting to suspect that she had missed something important. Webb returned to the lab the next day. This time he brought something with him, a small data chip that he placed on Rill's desk without a word. "What is this?" Rill asked. "A different analysis, when I ran myself years ago when I was still a scientist on Earth." Webb sat down across from her. "I want you to run it on my DNA sample. Look for what I tell you to look for, then make your own conclusions." Rill stared at the chip. Pell had entered the lab behind Webb and now stood frozen near the door. "Why should I trust you?" Rill asked. "Because I am not trying to hide what we are. I am trying to show you the complete picture." Rill hesitated. Everything in her training told her to call security, to have Webb removed, to continue with the official analysis that would condemn humanity as a threat species. But Webb's words from yesterday still haunted her. What we choose to do with it. She took the chip. The analysis program was simple. It looked for social bonding markers, empathy responses, caretaking instincts, the same traits that made prey species form herds and communities. Rill expected to find nothing. Predators did not have these markers. That was basic xenogenetics. The results proved her wrong. "This is impossible," Pell whispered. He had moved closer to look at the screen. Human DNA contained the strongest pair bonding markers in the collective's database, stronger than any species they had ever studied. Humans formed attachments that lasted entire lifetimes. They created emotional connections that could not be broken. Keep reading, Webb said. Rill scrolled down. There was more. Empathy markers that allowed humans to sense the emotional states of others. Neurological structures dedicated specifically to caregiving. Genetic codes that triggered protective responses toward anything perceived as weak or young. I do not understand, Rill said. These traits contradict everything else we found. Do they? Webb leaned forward. Or do they explain everything else? Explain. Webb pointed at the screen. You found that we are pursuit predators. We chase prey until it collapses. But what happens when one of our children goes missing? We search. We do not stop. We do not rest. We pursue until we find them or until we die trying. Rill felt something shift in her understanding. You found pack hunting instincts, Webb continued. The ability to coordinate attacks as a group, but that same instinct makes us form communities, families, nations. We protect our pack, Doctor. We kill for our pack, and our pack is not limited to other humans. The cross-species bonding markers, Pell said slowly. Yes, you thought we recruit other predators to hunt with us, but look at our history. Webb pulled up files on his personal device. Images appeared on the lab's main screen. We found wolves in the wilderness. They could have been our competitors. Instead, we made them family. We share our food with them. We let them sleep in our homes. We mourn when they die. More images, humans with cats, with horses, with birds, with creatures of every shape and size. We do not just bond with predators, Webb said. We bond with everything. Give a human a rock with 2 dots that look like eyes and they will name it. Give them a broken machine and they will feel sad when it stops working. Our bonding instincts have no limits. Rill looked at the data with new eyes. The predator traits were still there. The killing capabilities were still present. But now she could see something else wrapped around them. Every weapon had a purpose. Every deadly instinct served a goal. You evolved to protect, Rill said. We evolved to protect what we love, Webb corrected. And we are very, very good at loving things. The door burst open. Director Koss entered with 4 security officers behind her. Ambassador Webb, you are to come with us immediately. The Galactic Council has ordered your isolation pending a threat assessment. Webb stood slowly. He did not resist. He did not argue. I understand, he said calmly. The officers surrounded him. Koss watched with cold satisfaction. Your research will be concluded by the Council's own scientists, Koss told Rill. You are removed from this project. Director, wait, Rill said. We found something important. You found that humanity is dangerous. That is all the Council needs to know. That is not all there is. Koss ignored her. The officers began leading Webb toward the door. Webb looked back at Rill one last time. Finish your research, he said. Find the truth, all of it, then decide what you believe. The door closed behind him. Pell and Rill stood alone in the lab, surrounded by data that told 2 different stories. One story said humanity was the ultimate predator. The other said they were the ultimate protector. What do we do? Pell asked. Rill looked at the screen, at the bonding markers, at the empathy responses, at the protective instincts that wrapped around every predator trait like armor around a sword. We finish the research, she said, and we find out which story is true. She had a feeling the answer would change everything. Rill worked through the night, ignoring every message from Director Koss. She had been removed from the project. Her access codes should have been revoked, but Pell had spent 2 hours bypassing the security locks, and now she had everything she needed. The truth was in the data, she just had to find it. Pell brought her food that she did not eat. He brought her water that she forgot to drink. He stayed by her side as she ran analysis after analysis, searching for the piece that would make sense of everything. She found it just before dawn. Pell, she said, look at this. The screen showed a genetic sequence she had never seen before. It was buried deep in human DNA, hidden among millions of other markers. But once she saw it, she could not look away. "What is that?" Pell asked. "Self-sacrifice coding." Pell's scales flushed pale. "That cannot exist. No species would evolve a trait that works against survival." "Humans did," Rill pointed at the data. "This sequence activates in life-threatening situations. When a human perceives someone else in danger, this coding can override every survival instinct in their body. They will die to save others." "Others of their species?" "No others. Anyone. Anything." Rill pulled up historical records from Earth's database. "Look at these. Humans running into burning buildings to save strangers. Soldiers covering explosives with their own bodies to protect their companions. Parents lifting objects that should be too heavy because their children are trapped underneath." The records went on and on. Thousands of examples, millions of examples, humans dying for people they did not know. Humans sacrificing themselves for creatures of other species. Humans giving their lives for ideas, for principles, for strangers who would never learn their names. "They are insane," Pell whispered. "They are protectors." Rill stood up from her chair. "Do you understand now? Every predator trait we found, every killing capability, every hunting instinct, it all serves this purpose. They evolved to be the most dangerous creatures in their world so they could protect the things they love." "But the aggression, the violence." "Directed violence, controlled violence." Rill pulled up more data. "Look at their conservation efforts. Species that were going extinct because of human activity, humans then spent decades protecting and restoring. They hunted some creatures to near extinction, then built entire organizations dedicated to keeping those creatures alive." "That makes no sense." "It makes perfect sense. They did not know what they were doing at first. They were young, unaware of their own impact. But the moment they understood, they changed. They used their predator instincts to protect the same creatures they had hunted." Pell sat down heavily. His mind was clearly struggling to accept what the data showed. Rill kept working. She compiled everything into a single report. The predator traits, the bonding markers, the protective instincts, the self-sacrifice coding. Every piece of human DNA that told the story of a species that had evolved not to dominate but to defend. "The Council is meeting tomorrow," Pell said. "They will decide humanity's fate based on Koss's report." "Then I need to be there." "Rill, you have been removed from the project. You will not be allowed inside." "I will find a way." Pell was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I will help you." They spent the rest of the day preparing. Rill organized her data into a presentation that could not be ignored. Pell worked on getting her access to the council chamber. It was dangerous. If they were caught, they would lose their careers, maybe their freedom. But Rill kept thinking about Webb in his isolation cell. A man whose DNA made him the most effective protector in the galaxy, locked away because people only saw the predator. That was wrong, and she was going to fix it. The next morning, Pell met her outside the council chamber. "The doors will open in 5 minutes," he said. "I can get you inside, but after that you are on your own." "Thank you, Pell." "Do not thank me yet. If this does not work, we are both finished." Rill looked at the massive doors that led to the chamber. Behind them, the leaders of 30 species would decide whether humanity was a friend or a threat. They would make that decision based on fear, based on incomplete data, based on everything except the truth. She took a deep breath. "It will work," she said. "It has to." The doors began to open. Rill stepped forward, her report clutched in her hands, ready to fight for a species that was not her own. Ready to show the galaxy what humanity really was. Rill pushed through the doors before anyone could stop her. The council chamber was vast, filled with representatives from across the galaxy. Director Koss stood at the central platform, her presentation displayed on every screen. Human predator traits, Deathworld origins, threat assessment maximum. "This woman has been removed from the project," Koss shouted as guards moved toward Rill. "Remove her immediately." "I have evidence the Council has not seen." Rill held up her datapad. "Evidence that changes everything." The guards grabbed her arms, but before they could drag her away, a voice spoke from the highest seat in the chamber. "Let her speak." Everyone turned. High Counselor Davin, the oldest and most respected member of the Assembly, was looking directly at Rill. "We are deciding the fate of an entire species," Davin said. "We should hear all available evidence." The guards released Rill. She walked to the platform, her heart's pounding, and connected her datapad to the display system. "Director, Koss showed you what humans are capable of," Rill began. "She showed you the predator traits, the hunting instincts, the aggression, but she showed you only half the truth." Rill changed the display. New data appeared on the screens. Humans have the strongest pair-bonding genetics in the known galaxy. They form attachments that last lifetimes. They feel empathy so powerful they can be moved to tears by the suffering of strangers. They have neurological structures dedicated to protecting anything they perceive as weak or young. Murmurs spread through the chamber. "And they have something no other species has ever evolved." Rill highlighted the self-sacrifice sequence. "Genetic coding that allows them to override every survival instinct to save others. They will die for creatures they have never met. They will fight for species not their own." "This does not change what they are," Koss argued. "They are still predators." "Yes, they are the most effective predators in the galaxy." Rill turned to face the Council directly. "And every predator trait makes them better protectors. The pursuit instincts that let them chase prey for days. They use them to search for missing children until they collapse. The pack hunting coordination, they use it to build communities that defend the helpless. The aggression, it activates when something they love is threatened." She pulled up images from Earth. Humans protecting endangered animals. Humans rescuing creatures from disasters. Humans adopting orphaned wildlife and raising it as their own. "They do not just hunt," Rill said. "They guard, they shelter, they defend. Every weapon in their DNA has been turned toward protection. They are not apex predators, they are apex guardians." The chamber fell silent. Even Koss had nothing to say. High Counselor Davin leaned forward. "Bring the human." Guards escorted Webb into the chamber. He looked tired. Dark circles hung under his eyes, but he stood straight and met the Council's gaze without fear. "Ambassador Webb," Davin said, "if we welcome humanity fully into the collective, what will your species do?" Webb looked around the chamber, at the dozens of alien faces watching him, at the guards who still viewed him as a threat, at Rill, who had risked everything to tell the truth. "The same thing we have always done," Webb said. "Find creatures that need protecting and make sure nothing hurts them. Even species that are not your owned, especially species that are not our own." Webb smiled slightly. "We have a saying on Earth, the measure of a society is how it treats its weakest members. We believe that applies to the galaxy too." Davin was quiet for a long moment, then he called for a vote. The result was not close. 26 species voted to welcome humanity, 4 abstained, none voted against. Koss approached Rill after the session ended. Her face was unreadable. "I was wrong," she said finally. "I saw the weapons and missed the purpose behind them." "We all did," Rill replied, "at first." 1 year passed. Rill was in her lab when the news broadcast appeared on her screen. A Lorani colony ship had crashed on a hostile frontier world. Dozens of survivors were stranded, including many children. A rescue team was already on the way. The broadcast showed their ship approaching the planet. 3 of the rescue team members were human. They had not been assigned. They had not been ordered. They had simply heard about the crash and volunteered before anyone else could respond. Pell entered the lab and stood beside Rill, watching the broadcast. "They did not hesitate," he said. "They never do." Rill watched the human rescuers prepare to descend into a hostile atmosphere to save children of another species. "That is what we missed at first. All those predator traits, all that lethality, they did not evolve it to dominate. They evolved it because somewhere in their genetic memory, they decided that nothing would hurt the creatures under their protection. And they meant it, Pell said. They meant it. The broadcast ended. The rescue mission was underway. A week later, Webb visited Rill's lab one last time. He brought a small gift, a plant in a tiny pot. It is called a forget-me-not, he explained. Humans give them to people they want to remember them. Rill took the plant carefully. Its flowers were small and blue, fragile in appearance but somehow resilient. Why this gift, she asked. Because you saw us clearly when others could not. You looked past the teeth and claws and saw what we choose to be. Webb smiled. That deserves to be remembered. He left. Rill placed the plant on her desk, where it would stay for the rest of her career. Sometimes she looked at it and thought about humanity, about predators who chose to be protectors, about killers who became guardians, about a species that looked at a hostile universe and decided that nothing would hurt the things they loved, and meant it.